You know, the biggest wins in investing is when you've gotten things right when the whole world is looking in the other direction. And let's use Tesla as an example. Because back in 2018-2019, the fate of electric vehicles was still hanging in the balance. Not many would have thought that Tesla would emerge as a true market leader. And those who have battled with Tesla back then have seen extraordinary gains. So using that logic on seeing what the market is not seeing, that's why we have today's exercise of 7 key trends to take note of that could happen in 2022. Now, disclaimer again, these are trends that I think are reasonable in my opinion, but there's also a certain level of uncertainty. And let's start the discussion with rating those that are generally applicable to everybody, and then we'll move on to certain industries as well as to cryptocurrencies, which is probably a niche topic. And if any of them are correct, I think that would be pretty cool to have. And let's look back 1 year ago, in 2020, where I made 7 key predictions also for 2021. I've actually gotten a few of them correct. One of which is actually a black swan event whereby Chinese bonds start to become shaky. And indeed, 2021, China Evergrande went into defaults. I also mentioned REITs will go on to buying spree. And indeed, we've seen many acquisitions like Ascendus buying data centers as well as Mapletree Industrial Trust. And also the growth of Bitcoin. Right now, Tesla owns 42,000 Bitcoins, which is worth about $1.3 billion. So those are some trends that I've gotten correct. And let's discuss moving forward for 2022 what to take note of. If you're keen, let's roll in the intro video. Hi guys, welcome back. Let's roll in the first key prediction for 2022. Cat B COE will crack $100,000. Take a look at this chart over here. What do you see? A massive spike in Cat B COE, right? Cat B is those vehicles that are more than 1,600cc. And why did it spike? It could be attributed to one key factor, which is the popularity of Tesla 3. Now, I do expect Tesla 3 to continue to sell well in 2022. And that could really continue the pressure on Cat B prices. And if it does indeed crack $100,000, it is also quite possible that we will have big reforms into how we design the COE structure. Should we still maintain this bidding for quota method? Because to many people in other countries, it is absurd. So let's keep a keen eye on Cat B COE prices moving forward to 2022. The second thing to look out for is cooling measures for residential property in Singapore. Now, one reason why nothing has happened in 2021 was that BTOs were delayed because we still had a lot of social distancing measures. Construction was slow. And when BTOs had developmental issues, that naturally squeezed onto the resale HDB market, which in turn squeezed onto the private market. But if we think 2022, construction would normalize again, then politically it might be a better time to start implementing measures to bring down property prices again. And in my guess, HDB resale has really ran out quite a bit. If you see the index trend over here. If I were in charge of putting cooling measures, I would think the easiest to tweak would be to increase the buyer's stamp duty for amounts more than $1 million. Right now, that has inched up to 4%. Could it be increased further? I think that is something interesting to look out for 2022. And if it does happen, do expect that real estate players and real estate brokerage stocks, they might see a hit in terms of the sentiment. The third thing to watch out for is glove industry. One of my favorite glove makers is actually Riverstone Holdings. And if you look at the price chart over here, horrific, correct, in terms of the price decline. And a lot of it is due to pressures in the average selling price of gloves. As we progress in this pandemic, some developed countries have overstocked in terms of what they need for gloves. And they have simply just consumed their emergency stock. But I'd like to use Riverstone as a good example. What do you see over here? They have more than 1.7 billion ringgit in terms of cash, correct? If you net out certain liabilities, that translates to about 550 million Sing dollars worth of cash. That equates also to about 35 cents on a share. Now let me flash up the share price for Riverstone before the pandemic to versus right now. What do we see? It is almost close to its pre-pandemic price, correct? But they do have 35 cents per share in terms of cash sitting in a bank account already. What I'm suggesting is that glove manufacturers are indeed very cheap. The only problem is if you buy right now, you're catching a falling knife. But my guess is that some glove companies could be taken private for 2022, and if they do, that could raise sentiment again for glove makers. The fourth thing to look out for comes from the travel sector. I do know right now that Omicron is running wild again globally, and I've actually shared something in the private members channel. So I'll just play a little bit for you to understand my perspective on things. you should not be too worried because we're weeks away from a solution. And even if a new one comes about, we're weeks away from a solution. It is normal in a virology cycle that things become less lethal and more transmittable as it progresses. Now, if you're keen to find out more, join the private members channel. But back to travel itself. Every indication right now suggests that Omicron is less lethal than the Delta wave. And if we extrapolate that moving forward, there could be subsequent generations of COVID-19, but it will not derail the recovery of the travel sector. That is why I do believe that room rates in Singapore, for example the hotels, are just going to climb in 2022, and we'll see a more positive sentiment for travel-related stocks. The fifth thing to watch out for is inflation. I've mentioned before on how to invest in an inflation world. So if you haven't seen it, click the link above and I'll actually leave it towards the end of this video also. But my special take on inflation is that if you read around, a lot of the inflation is caused by supply chain issues. And if we assume that travel would reinstate, logistics will reinstate, the issue of inflation may not be permanent, which means we could see a subsiding of inflation maybe second half of 2022. But it is indeed baked in that first half of 2022, we might see a spike in terms of inflation. Food prices will increase. If you go to NTUC, you might see each and every item costing more than before. And if you go to hawker centers, you might see the food prices being raised by 50 cents simply because the Tupperware costs a bit more money, the noodles now cost a bit more money. Now, what industries could be impacted if the supply chain issues resolve in 2022? There are two key industries that I could suggest. The first is in semiconductors. They have seen their share price skyrocket for 2020 to 2021. The second industry to take note of are shipping firms. They have seen their share price also skyrocket simply because the ship chartering rates have just been skyrocketing. So be very careful if you're invested in these sectors, track the numbers and stay safe. Now, if any of these points resonate with you, smash the like button and also leave in the comments which ones are those. Now let's move on to the sixth thing to watch out for, which is actually in the cryptocurrency space. Ethereum, it could become the biggest market cap coin as early as 2022. If you think that is a bit crazy, let me show you the chart of Ethereum versus Bitcoin. You realize that it's been climbing quite steadily, correct? Not only that, this is not even the peak for Ethereum to Bitcoin, and that has actually happened in 2017. So assuming Ethereum continues to climb against Bitcoin, it is not inconceivable that they make up that ground and eventually become the biggest market cap coin. Ethereum themselves are launching something for 2022. If you're a cryptocurrency expert, you kind of know what I'm talking about. And that could reduce transaction fees in the Ethereum network, which means even handling more transactions than before. And if institutions start to get interested in Ethereum, just as how they have done for 2020 in Bitcoin, you could see the demand for Ethereum skyrocket, and they could quite simply crack $10,000 per coin. The seventh thing to watch out for is actually a person, and this person is Sam Bankman. Sam Bankman is big in the cryptocurrency space, and my opinion is that he could crack the top 10 richest people if he triples his net wealth. Sam is right now worth about $20 billion and he's only at the age of 30. And how he has made so much money is because he owns FTX, one of the more popular exchanges right now on the market. Keep track of this guy because he's actually handled big projects, such as the migration for SushiSwap, which is a DeFi token. And he has hands in many projects in the cryptocurrency space. So if any of them take off big, it's quite conceivable that his net worth will grow substantially. And you know Elon Musk has this Midas touch, whereby anything he mentions start to become favorable in the market. I think it's not impossible that Sam might also acquire that stature, and everything he mentions in the cryptocurrency space starts to turn into gold. So hopefully you've heard something new in this discussion. Again, invite you to smash the like button. It's taken our team hours to produce this content for you. And let's review all these points in a year's time because some of them might come into fruition and make you some good profits. So with that, I'll sign off and invite you to some of the previous videos I've done before relating to some of the things I mentioned on this video. The first is Riverstone Holdings, on point number 3 whereby it's possible that someone in the glove industry gets privatized. The second is actually this video on the top dividend pick for 2022. So I'll see you in either of these tutorials and I'll sign off from here. Take care and goodbye.